Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 198 of Ask Bossk Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave that question in the comments of this video, and hopefully I will get round to answering your question. I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that attended the live stream last night. Me, Chris and John Miko had a great time doing that live stream and revealing the top 10 for the last figure standing. You are able to vote now on who goes through to the next round of last figure standing. I will leave a link to the Google Sheet in the description of this video as well, so you'll be able to go off and cast your votes, and obviously we'll be doing a future live stream revealing the results of that round. Eventually getting down to, I think we're doing a live stream on the 23rd of December where we will reveal the final last figure standing. So yeah, big thank you to everybody that watched last night and joined in on the polls and things like that. We just had a great time doing it. It was awesome, so thank you. So with all that being said, if you happen to enjoy this video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new, and we'll get straight onto the first question. Patreon supporter Marky D1967 says, "Hi Bossk, been a while since I submitted a question for next week, so here goes. After watching your review of TVC 300 Hera Syndulla, one thing that now stands out between the Black Series and the Vintage Collection lines is that the Black Series is starting to move away from the thigh swivel articulation, the one that allows the thigh to basically rotate around 360 degrees. Hera's 6-inch Black Series counterpart is one of the figures without that thigh swivel, as is the new 6-inch Sabine. Do you see Hasbro ever doing this in the Vintage Collection articulation system, or have they already and I've just not noticed it yet?" So yeah, this came about, I think the first time people noticed it was with the press images for the Black Series version of the Hera Syndulla figure, and that was actually brought up in a Hasbro Q&A. We actually asked the question, and the answer that they gave is that the articulation for the hips is getting so good now that they don't actually need that thigh cutter anymore in the 6-inch line, which was an interesting thing. So we did bring it up in a Hasbro Q&A, whether that would follow suit and be incorporated in the Vintage Collection. And yeah, I'm not too sure if we enjoyed the answer. I think they mentioned something about the Vintage Collection line being better shaped for repaints and kit bashes and things like that. It was the wrong way to answer the question, really. But essentially what they said was that the thigh cut for the Vintage Collection is staying for the time being. JMTDF says, "Long time viewer, first time commenter. Question for next week. Do you think there's a disconnect between what fans want as well as what Disney wants to promote versus Hasbro wants to sell? I ask because my son has zero interest in the Disney trilogy, and that's what seems to collect dust even at discount retailers. He likes the Mando, but the vast majority of his love is for the OT characters followed by the PT. Is this sentiment common?" I think it depends, really. I mean, let's not discount the fact that there are definitely people out there that do like the sequel trilogy and therefore want figures and characters from the sequel trilogy. I personally am not one of those people. I do like some of the things that Disney have been putting out, but my main focus would always be the original trilogy, but that's just me. I may not be alone in that thinking, but there definitely are people out there that do want all of the new media characters and characters from the sequel trilogy. In terms of what the disconnect between Hasbro and Disney and Lucasfilm and the fans, I think it's a balancing act. Of course, you're always going to get Lucasfilm pushing the latest and greatest thing that's out at that moment. They're going to want to do that to promote their shows. That's why we've been getting a lot of figures from the Ahsoka series right now, because that's the latest thing. And obviously with The Mandalorian being such a huge hit, the first 2 series anyway, we've got a whole slew of characters from The Mandalorian. Unfortunately, what happens with that is it doesn't leave a lot of slots in the line for the original legacy characters. I think it is a huge balancing act for Hasbro. I don't envy them in it at all, but I don't think there's really a disconnect. I think basically, if you look at the last figure standing poll that we did, Baylan and Shin are 2 characters that are in that top 10, and that does show you that the fans do want new media characters. Young Weto 59 says, "Hey BB, great video as always, so close to 200. Question for next week. Do you happen to know when any pre-orders will be available for those pipeline figures and which ones you're looking forward to the most? Leia, Rex, Vader, Django. Thanks." I'm not 100% sure when they will be available for pre-order. My guess would be early next year, probably January, February time. They'll probably do a live stream revealing some of those, I would imagine. The ones I'm looking forward to the most, I think you've listed a few of them there. The Leia, 100% looking forward to seeing what she's going to look like. A brand new Leia Organa with today's technology. I cannot wait to see that, to be honest. Darth Vader, that would be great to see the A New Hope version, although we kind of know what we're going to be getting with that one. And Jango. I mean, when we see what they've done with the pre-Vizsla figure, I can't wait to see what they do with Jango. And that's definitely one I'm going to be looking forward to. Andrew Cook says, hey boss, question for next week. With the success of the Mandalorian N1 leading many of us to hope that we'll get a Naboo N1 next year for the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, what pilot figure do you think Hasbro might include? They could reuse the Naboo pilot from TVC 1.0 like they did with the Chewie and the ATST, partially retool that figure to give us Rick Ollie, or do you think we might get an all-new young Anakin pilot figure? Well, yeah, first of all, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that we will get a Naboo N1 Starfighter next year for the 25th anniversary. I think it would be a cool thing for them to do, definitely. And I would want one. I don't have that one from 2012, which is pretty much what this one is based on. And I've got to say, if they were to do that, I think they've got to include Rick Ollie. I think that's got to be the figure that they include in that. He is definitely missing from the line. He's one of the main characters from the Phantom Menace, the main pilot. And yeah, I would definitely prefer a Rick Ollie figure over an Anakin pilot, I've got to say. Andre Harcheng says, question for next week, is it me or has the value in Star Wars Black Series and Vintage Collection declined in recent months and years? The figures itself seem to hold little value in them when trying to sell them. Furthermore, they seem to go on clearance very quickly. As always, great video and keep it up. I think that's probably got something to do with lockdown, perhaps. I think that brought a lot of new collectors into collecting Star Wars, not just the modern, but vintage as well. And prices went sky high, especially for vintage in those times. Bringing more people into the hobby, they often go back to the previous lines or older figures, TVC 1.0, things like that. And that just inevitably pushes the price up. I think when everyone just got back to normal, got back to work, got back to their daily lives, I think maybe people fell out of the hobby then. You know, they've got other things to do, other things that are going to take up their time. And therefore, a lot of the stuff that they've accumulated ends up going back into the market and the market becomes flooded. I also feel that the success of the vintage collection at one point, especially when we're talking about a wave such as the one that had Queel, Bo-Katan and the Mythrol in it, you know, that was, for me, overproduced. That was literally everywhere. You could end up getting Bib Fortuna for like £3, which you never really want to see that happening. So I just think the sort of production numbers were ramped up at that point because that was at the height of its popularity maybe. And as I say, as time has gone on, maybe some people have dropped out of the hobby. Maybe people aren't enjoying the price point of the figures anymore and they're dropping out because of that. But that's my thought on it. In terms of the Black Series, I don't really look too much about that, but I think the Black Series, again, is produced in mass numbers. So it's only very rare that perhaps that you get one figure like Captain Rex, which is maybe a bit more scarce, a bit more popular, and therefore more hard to get hold of. Justin Strasburger 1560 says, hello Tim, great video as always. Question for next week. The Night Trooper 4-pack, is Hasbro really going to ruin that 4-pack by putting Captain Enoch in it? He should be on his own card. None of us who army build want to waste a slot for a figure that should be released alone. Also, do you think there's any chance they will release Task Force 99 like they did in the Black Series? Anyway, to get more and different Stormtroopers would be awesome. To answer your question, yes, they are putting Enoch into that 4-pack, which is, yeah, it's a pretty depressing thought, isn't it? Because myself will only end up buying one of those packs, where really I could do with maybe 8 of those Night Troopers at least to create a mini army of those, and then I'm only going to want one Enoch. So that's a bit of a shame. It would have been nice to have just got 4 straight Night Troopers, as you say. So unfortunately that is the case. In terms of Task Force 99, I'm not too sure if we'd get all of those, but certainly the one that they did in the Black Series, I could see them doing that in the Vintage Collection because that'd be another easy reuse of the Stormtrooper. So I'm sure at some point if they ever need to do a nice easy repack, that's the sort of thing they could do. Damien Addington says, hello there, BB, excellent video. Question for next week. Is there any chance that the Dianaga will be made as a full-size creature figure? I alone think that would be ideal for those who made their own custom Death Star trash compactor dioramas based on Star Wars Battlefront for the PS4. Thank you in advance. I've got to say that I think the only way that we'd ever get a Dianaga monster would be if they did do a trash compactor playset, which I really can't see them doing personally. Other than that, if they ever did like a HasLab Death Star or something, then I could see them including the Dianaga monster in there. That'd be the perfect way to do it. I mean, you can't have a Death Star without the Dianaga. Evan Weiss says, hey Tim, as always, great episode and can't wait for the big 200th coming up soon. Question for next week. Are you at liberty to discuss the process of sending and submitting questions to Hasbro for their Q&As without saying something that you might later regret or knock you out of being able to get invited back? Can you elaborate on what Hasbro does or doesn't specify is off limits? It seems like a lot of the questions they get asked over and over are very generic and not very hard hitting. You and Chris from Bantha Skull tend to push about as far as anyone, but I know there has to be more you guys want to ask but can't or won't. Are there specific guidelines for asking Hasbro these questions? Thanks for all you do for the community. So I've been completely open and transparent on this in the past, especially with my like Patreon supporters and channel members, because when I put my questions together, I ask them what they want to ask, because I feel that this is a community thing and it's not just me asking. I want to know what they want to ask them as well. I wouldn't say there's any sort of guidelines specifically. They only really sort of say, you know, can you sort of ask questions around the new reveals, for example, because it's on topic, isn't it? You know, why would I ask a question about a figure that was released 4 years ago? There doesn't seem any point in doing that. So often it's about the most recent reveals. But as you say, me and Chris have maybe been able to bend those rules ever so slightly and talk about other things that are on the community's mind. There's nothing that I've ever been told that I can't ask, or I've never had a question been pushed back at me. I've definitely had questions where I don't feel they've answered it properly. That always happens. But yeah, the questions that I've submitted, I've never had knocked back. I don't want to speak for Chris, but I think maybe last time, I think he may have even written an article about this. I think there might have been a couple of questions that he had on his list of questions that they weren't prepared to answer in that format. So he had to come up with some other questions. But in the main, I think they try and answer the questions basically. Yeah, but that's it really. There isn't sort of any sort of mystique to it. It's just basically they ask you for your questions in advance, pretty much maybe in case they need to do some research or whatever, maybe to be able to answer the question. Barada73 says, resubmitting a previous question. We need FX-7 to finish the 96, and the 2001 Power of the Jedi figure could easily be repackaged on a vintage style card to fill that slot. To this day, that figure still has more points of articulation than any other figure in the Star Wars toy line. However, are collectors really going to want to pay nearly $20 for a repack of a figure that was only $5 over 20 years ago, just for the TVC card back? Would it be better to release the droid as a carded pack-in for a back-to-tank playset, or maybe as part of a multi-pack with at least one all-new figure, 2-1B maybe? Or is this a case where custom carding the Power of the Jedi figure will be the only way collectors get a chance of filling that slot? So yeah, this is an interesting one. I could talk for a while about this one because I do like the FX-7 figure that I have here, and I do want a 2-1B. However, the points that you make there, you know, would people want to pay $20 for a repack? No, they wouldn't, but would they? I think they would. I think at least 50% of the TVC community are, you know, on-card only collectors, and then you've probably got, I don't know, 20% that open them and don't care about the card back, and then the rest collect both. So I think there is a lot of people out there that do want FX-7 on that card back and probably would end up paying $20 or $16.99 for it or whatever. I don't think having it as a pack-in for a back-to-tank would actually even help that, because I'm sure that Hasbro would end up just costing that in somewhere as part of that playset. But what I would love them to do, and I think this would be great, is a 2-pack. We've seen these 2-packs recently. I just recently reviewed the Jedi Knight Revan HK47. Wouldn't it be great to have a 2-pack of FX-7 and 2-1B? And then you're kind of getting the best of both worlds there. Yes, you are getting a repacked figure, but it's a great figure, by the way. They don't need to do anything else to this. This is your FX-7. It's great. But then if they included an all-new 2-1B, and you get like a medical droid 2-pack, I think that would be the best way to do it. I think that would be really, really cool. Of course, they'd charge $39 for it or whatever. which wouldn't be ideal. But if they were to make an all newly tooled 2-1B, that would definitely soften the blow of spending $20 on a $5 figure, as you say. Channel member Riley Bob says, "Hey Tim, excellent video as always. Question for next week. Seeing you review the pre-Vizsla had me thinking. Think Hasbro would ever make a Throne of Mandalore playset? Being that it's a key scene for many parts of the Clone Wars, and they have so many great figures to fill it out with. Seems like a no-brainer, but there is not enough playability since it's basically a wall of windows, floor and a chair. But man, the way you could fill it out. As always, keep up the great work and happy holiday." Yeah, I totally agree. We do have lots of figures that could go with that. And it reminds me a little bit of the Emperor's Throne Room. That came out as a convention exclusive. And at the time, everyone was like, this isn't a playset. What's going on? It should have this. It should have that. But at the end of the day, it was a convention exclusive. It wasn't really meant to be a specific playset. And maybe they could do something like that in the future for the Throne of Mandalore, where it's like, I don't know, like maybe the box opens out or something. You've just got the throne or something. I don't know. But maybe that's more of an inexpensive way of getting that out. As you say, it wouldn't really have too much playability with it otherwise. But you're absolutely right. We have plenty of figures that could go with the Throne of Mandalore. Justin Riley says, "Great question and answer session as always. Question for next week. I'm really interested and keen on the Ghost Crew. When do you think Hasbro will show pictures of the talked about pipeline Ghost Crew that will appear in the regular line? And do you think they will all become available next year? I really hope they are not drip fed over the course of the next few years." No, most definitely they pipelined all of those together and they will be coming out next year. I think because of the other stuff that we've had previously pipelined, I think they may be slotted in later on in the year. So I would probably hope that maybe February, March, we will probably be able to pre-order those figures. But that, you know, all the ones that they pipelined there, the Rebels crew, they're for next year. Cody Honey says, "Hope you find a great deal on the AT-AT, Tim. Question for next week. My number one most wanted figure is Aura Singh, but with the price on the secondary market, I can't see that happening. With next year being the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, is there any chance we get her? It makes more sense than a re-release of Finn." So here she is, Aura Singh, and you're right, she is quite expensive on the secondary market, and this is one of those ones that I feel is a strong candidate for a reissue from the Phantom Menace. When I look at the others from the Phantom Menace, there isn't really too many that they haven't already re-released, like Darth Maul, for example, that warrant being re-released or need a significant upgrade to be released again, if you know what I mean. I think this figure is perfectly fine. She comes with lots of accessories and it is expensive on the secondary market. It's one of those ones that I feel is prime candidate for being re-released. So me personally, I wouldn't pay the money for it. I would wait, see at least beginning of next year for any pipelines or anything like that, because they do pipeline the reissues occasionally as well, so maybe just hold fire a little while. But I definitely want that figure as well, again, because I would like to have that figure loose. I only have her carded, and I'm certainly not opening this one. Rich Capo says, "Been watching your channel for a few months now, and I definitely appreciate the content and look forward to your new videos." Thank you, Rich. Really appreciate that, buddy. He says, "Question for next week. Uncertain if this question has been asked before, but do you think we'll ever get a Darth Bane in TVC? After reading the Darth Bane trilogy, I can't help but wish he was in the line." I think he's one of those figures that really needs to do well in like one of the polls that we do, like the last figure standing. You know, if Hasbro can see demand for that figure, very much like they did with Revan. They were about to re-release Revan a couple of years ago now, and people were like, no, you can't give us that one from 2007. We need an all-new one. And then eventually they got round to it. So I think Darth Bane is probably in that category. I think they would need to see some demand from the community in, you know, polls and things like that to even think about maybe giving us that character. But I can fully understand why it would be a popular choice. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for submitting your questions. Don't forget, if you want to be featured in next week's episode and you have a question, leave that question in the comment section below. Once again, thank you to everybody that attended the live stream. Don't forget to vote for your figures in the link that I've provided in the description below. Don't forget to visit all of my friends' social channels and to follow the Last Figure Standing on Instagram. And then you can keep up to date with all what's going on with that poll, which is awesome. We're having loads of fun doing it. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. I want to thank my Patreon supporters and channel members. As always, your support means a great deal to me, so thank you so much. And we shall see you on the next one.